Hello, everyone, and welcome. Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all those who are able to join. We'll just wait a few moments while the attendees trickle in, and then we'll get started with today's event. All right. Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Anthony Wendt. I am the social protection lead from the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, or GAIN, and I'm going to be today's moderator. It's very nice to see all of you here, and we're very much looking forward to engaging with you in this conversation today. So our webinar today is entitled, Can Human-Centered Design Improve the Nutrition Impact of Social Protection? An Exploration of Evidence and Opportunities. This is an event organized by GAIN, and on behalf of GAIN, it's really a privilege to be here with you today to ignite this important conversation about how human-centered design might support social protection programs and systems to become more responsive to the nutritional needs of the most vulnerable populations. Today, we are very happy to leverage on the expertise of a diverse and knowledgeable panel of experts in their field. And this webinar will use those perspectives to explore various sources of evidence and the potential opportunities to apply human-centered design, or HCD, in the context of nutrition-sensitive social protection programs. And this webinar will emphasize the importance of design processes in determining a program's potential to impact and improve nutrition. Before we begin, I want to make a few general housekeeping announcements regarding the event. First thing to note is that today's webinar will last approximately 90 minutes and it will be recorded. There is also a Q&A feature enabled for this event, and members of the audience are encouraged to submit their questions to the panelists directly in the Q&A. That's to be found at the bottom of your Zoom application. So we'll look forward to your questions there in the Q&A box. We will hopefully have time to address several of your questions near the end of today's session, but please keep in mind that it won't be possible to answer every single question, but myself and the panelists will be actively monitoring the Q&A and will try to respond to as many as we can. So without further ado, I'd like to briefly orient us to the agenda of today's event. First, we will hear three complementary presentations from our excellent speakers today, which I'll introduce in just a few moments. Each of these speakers represents a distinct viewpoint on the issue at hand, the issue of using human-centered design to improve the design of social protection programs. Those viewpoints include a government social protection administrator, as well as an academic with expertise in the evaluation of nutrition-sensitive social protection programs. And thirdly, we have an expert in human-centered design with much knowledge of the practical applications of these kinds of approaches in a range of contexts. So after these three viewpoint presentations, we'll dive deeper into a single context to root our discussion really in the lived realities of social protection system actors and beneficiaries, through screening with you a very brief documentary film that highlights work that GAIN has done recently to support social protection system actors in Nigeria to incorporate human-centered design into their work. After screening this short documentary, we will welcome our fourth panelist, who represents a very exciting community-level viewpoint from Nigeria. and she will contribute valuable perspectives as a discussant in the moderated discussion that will follow the presentations. So let me now introduce formally the distinguished panelists that are taking part in today's event. First, representing the viewpoint of a government social protection administrator is Cynthia de Messier, who presently serves as the head of the Food Security Coordination Office in the Ethiopia Ministry of Agriculture. In her role, she has been involved in managing projects such as the Ethiopian Rural Productive Safety Net Program and the Ethiopian Emergency Desert Locust Project, among others. Second, we'll invite Dr. Dan Gilligan to represent the viewpoint of the expert in nutrition-sensitive social protection evaluation. Dr. Gilligan is presently the Director of Poverty, Gender, and Inclusion Unit of the International Food Policy Research Institute, or IFPRI, and his research addresses the impact of interventions in social protection, agriculture, and nutrition, as well as gender dimensions of inter-household decision-making and other topics. Our third viewpoint is that of a human-centered design expert and practitioner, and this viewpoint is being represented by Angela Hansen, the founder of Food Systems Foresight. Angela founded Food Systems Foresight in 2019 to help food system decision makers illuminate system dynamics, spur social innovation, and ensure sustainable development. And she has a vast knowledge of human-centered design and will support us all today to learn more about its potential applications. And finally, our fourth viewpoint from the community level is represented by Ms. Rachel Chioma Okpara, who serves as a school cook in Nigeria's homegrown school feeding program. In her role in the homegrown school feeding program, she has been involved in building relationships with food suppliers, ensuring the freshness and quality of food ingredients, implementing good hygiene and food safety practices, and she also serves as a liaison between program coordinators and local suppliers. We're very grateful and lucky to welcome her onto this panel with the other guests today. I'll briefly speak broadly about the spirit of this event before handing the stage over to our first speaker, Cynthia. Social protection is in many ways always and should be human-centered and necessarily puts the needs of vulnerable beneficiaries really at the core of design decisions and processes, ultimately shaping the way that beneficiaries access, utilize, and also benefit from social protection systems. And government actors and other key stakeholders seek to build social protection programs that do adequately address beneficiaries' specific needs. And today's session will start to examine and identify, based on sources of available evidence, the potential for human-centered design, or HCD, to support those system actors on their continuing quest to do more and to do better to leverage social protection for nutrition impact. And with that brief introduction, I'd just like to extend a warm welcome to our first speaker, Mrs. Cynthia de Messier from Ethiopia's Ministry of Agriculture, to deliver her viewpoint presentation. She'll provide an overview of the major design challenges that governments face in improving the nutrition impacts of social protection. Cynthia, over to you.
Thank you, Anthony. Shall I start the presentation or, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Anthony, thank you. And also thank you all that attendees for this platform. I'll share the Ethiopian rural PSNP contribution to human development. As you know, PSNP is a flagship program for Ethiopia. It's also supports 8 million people. Out of that, 51% is women. Because they are vulnerable, we want to more accommodate the women, poor and vulnerable people in the program. So from time to time, it's increasing. As you see, the design budget was 2.3 billion, but when the shock happened, it will increase due to the emergency nature of the program. The program goal, as you can see, it's supposed to reduce the extreme poverty. The outcome is to enhance the resilience to shocks and also extreme shocks for the poor and vulnerable people living in rural areas. So as an overview, the program has 5 outputs. Apart from the program management, the first one is transfer. This is to just timely support to smoothen their food gap for those poor and vulnerable PSNP beneficiaries. The second one is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a frequent drought happening in the country. There are also other shocks like previously happened, COVID. We trigger the resource on top of the regular support for PSNP beneficiaries as well as for non-PSNP beneficiaries living in the same program areas. The third one is public work. This is one of the contribution, the labor contribution from the program beneficiaries to manage the climate change and adaptation aspects. 80% of the beneficiary household work to earn monthly transfer for 6 months in a year, while labor constrained households like elderly and people living with many diseases receive 12 months of unconditional transfer. The fourth one is livelihood diversification. This is also support the core beneficiaries by giving intensive training support and also grants to enable them to start the income generating activity so that they can diversify assets and enable them to increase their income and really resilience to shocks. The last one is linkage to available social services. This is the support provided for temporary direct support and permanent direct support beneficiary. They are linked to locally available social services, including health, nutrition, and education service, and participates in behavioral change communication activities to more engaged in them in health and other social issues. As you can see, we want to bring your attention what we are working with social protection and job investment in Ethiopia for different life cycles. As you can see, from pregnancy to early years, we provide cash transfer support. We contribute also for the food security. We also contribute to the nutrition intervention. And also, by doing this, we can accumulate human capital. And the working age population also, we have a public work that I mentioned earlier to contribute for the climate change and also to construct social infrastructures. There are also a livelihood component that enhances the livelihood income. We have also, by doing this, actually, we can accumulate, we can utilize the human capital. The other is the permanent direct support. In the old age, we have also giving them a 12 months transfer without expecting any job contribution. We also link them to social services so that we protect them from not to be vulnerable. So this is the whole intention of our investment in different ages, and also the contribution to human capital. The rationale to mainstream nutrition issues in PSNP. We have many studies in the country, but we want to use the government, the Ethiopian Central Statistics data. And by using that data, we have the Ethiopia Demographic Household Survey within, 4 years basis. So the study shows us the food and nutrition insecurity is pervasive, and child malnutrition also significant. As you can see, 38% of the children under age 5 are stunted, 10% are wasted, and 24% are underweight. So there are also another evidence. There is a strong correlation between income poverty and poor performance in well-being outcomes for children. This is also explained with different kind of indicators. The nutrition and health outcomes are poor for poorer households, with only 25% of the children in the lowest wealth quintile receiving all basic vaccination, compared to the 65% of children for highest wealth quintile. Standing also much higher at 42% among children in the lowest wealth quintile compared to the highest quintile. Women from a household of the highest quintile were 3 times more likely to use antenatal care services compared to the lowest one. So this shows you how to make intervention, and also in which area to focus and support these targeted beneficiaries. So the entry point is, while we design PSNP, the entry point is where, for instance, when the targeting is made, the priority is given for those people that needs serious support. So we give priority while we targeting. There is also nutrition sensitive public works. For instance, for pregnant women, we will exempt from the public work, and we transition them when we are aware of or when we detect them through the hospital to PDS beneficiaries, to temporary PDS actually beneficiary until their child is 2 years old. We also allocate from our capital budget category, 3% of that should be used for nutrition sensitive public work intervention. We have 9 sub-projects. Out of it, the 3% should go to this intervention. The sub-projects also contribute to construct some of the social needs. For instance, construction of water, latrine facilities, health posts, child care centers, construction of school infrastructure, such as kitchen, canteen, and also storage facilities are implemented. There is also nutrient-rich plants and livestock are provided to pregnant and lactating women in Sakota declaration area. So there are also another entry points like social and behavioral change communication session. This will be done while the public work beneficiary is contributing to climate change adaptation. They will use some of their session to have an awareness on this specific issues. So the beneficiary are attended monthly The message is also given at this time so that people are aware and use for their life improvement. The 2% of this public work days also allocated for this session. When they participated, it accounted like they grew their public works. So there is also another entry point linkage to social services. As I mentioned, most of it is related to the nutrition aspect, and also the health aspect, so that people get a priority for these services in their locality. The other one is the Early Childhood Development Center. This is more of a pilot. We did in some of the areas. We want to scale up in this phase also. So until now, 45 community-based ECD centers piloted in 6 districts. Now in the 5th phase also, we are trying to pilot in 10 waredas in 5 regions. This is the intervention that we put in the design to contribute for nutrition and health aspects of the poor and vulnerable people. We have also an impact assessment that's continuously doing by IFPRI within 2 years basis. So from some of the studies that I find, I would like to share for you as an example. For instance, number of menses of PSNP households was a problem to meet their food needs. But in terms of the trend that you see in the slide, from 2006, there is an improvement to 2014. There is also in 2014 a real consumption expenditure doubled for PSNP households, as you can see in the slide. From 2006, there is also an improvement to 2014. So the expenditure from 309 birr reached to 608 birr. In terms of total per capita monthly expenditure among PSNP households, the study assessment, the impact assessment showed us it increased by 5% compared to similar non-PSNP households. So the 41% of PSNP households had no longer food gaps as compared to similar non-PSNP households. This is just to show the study result for some of the indicators, but if you can, research it, you can get it from the Google also. But just to show what's the contribution of the PSNP as an impact for some of the indicators. On specifically in nutrition, PSNP for impact evaluation showed us, for instance, 57% of pregnant women started to receive direct support payments. As I mentioned, they will change from public work to PDS when they know they are pregnant. A minimum dietary diversity among children also increased from 1.6% to 4.1%. There is also a livestock holding increase in households received 4 to 5 years of payments. There are also an experience in some of support declaration whereas they are exempted from health. The fee is exempted for health services as we are using the government data on this. For instance, in 21-22, over 388,000 PSNP beneficiaries of pregnant lactating mothers were linked to health and services in the Sakota declaration area. In 22-23 also, there are pregnant and lactating women exempted from the health and nutrition services expense. There is also another, evidence. For instance, currently PSNP 5 public work and livelihood review and spot check reveals that 62% of PSNP beneficiaries enrolled in nutrition services, 68% of PSNP households engaged in health extension program, 93% of PSNP beneficiaries also participated in monthly PSNP SBCC sessions. 75% of nutrition sensitive public work sub-projects also implemented. This is just to show an evidence, but PSNP has many evidences. Most of it are researched, but some of like Sakota Declaration Warada, we used an administrative data. So as a way forward, maybe from the lesson that we have learned until now, PSNP is an opportunity to mainstream nutrition, food security, and social protection, focusing on nutrition-sensitive intervention. Safety nets also have demonstrated the capacity to impact the key determinants of human capital formation by increasing school attendance of children and also improving mental health outcomes. So to amplify the human capital impacts of social protection, especially safety nets, can be better linked with social services to help remove economic barriers to basic social services in health and education, and also providing benefits with access to community-based health insurance. So in terms of, area of intervention, for instance, we can expand school feeding programs where safety net programs are active. We can also complement safety net support with fee waivers for health and nutrition services. We can also allocate adequate capital budget for nutrition sensitive public work and livelihood activities, so that we can impact, we can also contribute by strengthening, enhancing what we are right now implementing to contribute for human capital aspects. So on overall, the PSNP is one of the multi-sector engagement program. So we want to strengthen the institutional collaboration so that we can ensure the accountability of every sector's roles and responsibilities. By this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you. Back to you, Anton.
Thank you so much, Cynthia, for the truly enlightening presentation. I think we've learned a lot about the key considerations that are on your mind as an administrator, and also some of the challenges and future directions that can lead to even more improvements. I think that's really excellent. I'll now pass the floor to our second speaker, Dr. Dan Gilligan from IFPRI, who will speak to us about the key factors of social protection evaluation. Over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Anthony. And you can see my screen, I think. You see my slides?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, thank you. Okay, wonderful. And I'm very happy to follow the fantastic presentation by Sintayu. The PSNP is a program I know well, and it was just really great to kind of see her vision of how that contributes to improvement in well-being in Ethiopia. So my role here is to help provide some evidence on the effectiveness of nutrition-sensitive social protection programs. And so I'll get right into that. I'm going to share kind of an overview of review evidence from some carefully done review studies. And then I'm going to go through and share some examples of different types of social protection programming that include key nutrition components or nutrition-sensitive designs. So here I'll just focus on designing social protection to improve diets and nutrition among the poor. And I'm going to focus in terms of program modality. I'm going to focus mostly on social assistance programs. By that, we mean cash and food assistance targeted to the poor, often with complementary programs that address specific constraints to poverty alleviation. So the types of examples, the types of programs I'm talking about will be familiar to, I think, everyone. So these are targeted cash transfers, humanitarian food assistance, school meals would be included here, public works like the PSNP in Ethiopia. The motivation here for trying to improve diets of the poor through social protection is that the diets for poor households are often very low quality. As we saw, Santiago presented some data from Ethiopia consistent with the data that we have here from some of the impact evaluation work, where only 3% of children under age 2 and only 7% of women achieved the minimum dietary diversity recommended. So again, diets for poor households are in general very low quality. And so what might social protection programs do to improve that? Well, the main effect on diets of providing social assistance is an income effect. So again, the main effect of the transfer is to increase income. We know that these programs improve total household consumption. And because food is a high share of consumption in poor households, that means that they also tend to increase the value of food consumption. So that's a very good outcome. And again, this is coming through some review evidence in Bastagli et al. Based on another systematic review and meta-analysis, we then look at what is the effect of that increase in food consumption and other impacts through the household on health and healthcare utilization. What is the effects on child diets and on child nutritional status? The summary there is that there are effects. There are significant effects, but they are small. So essentially, cash transfers alone have modest effects on child diets, increasing dietary diversity by just about 1/2 of a food group. And there are modest effects on child nutritional status. One of the measures there is a reduction in stunting prevalence. That's very welcome, but it's small at only 1.4%. So what this tells us is that we're not going to get too far with cash transfers alone in terms of improving nutritional status. Significant progress on improving diets and nutrition of the poor through social protection is going to require other transfer modalities and complementary programs. So with that, now I want to go through and just bring some results forward from different types of, from evidence, this is of IFPRI research of different program modalities, both in terms of the type of social protection program and the type of approach to addressing nutrition. My first example is on effects on diets that differ by transfer modality. This is work from Ethiopia led by my colleague Melissa Hadrobo, where for World Food Program, they had an experiment that compared food transfers, a food basket, to cash transfers or food vouchers. And we're just looking at the effects here of those 3 different modalities. So the food vouchers provided access in local markets to a particular basket of food, but it was a wider basket than is available through direct food transfers. The takeaway here, looking at food frequency by the food groups shown, is that the food transfers were more successful at increasing intake of the items in the food basket. So if those are the key items that you want to households to increase their consumption of, then food transfers directly can do that. But the vouchers were more successful at increasing more nutrient-dense food consumption, like vegetables, eggs, milk and dairy, not so for pulses in that case. Food also worked better than cash at increasing caloric intake, but otherwise cash performed as well as food at increasing diet quality. Next, I want to refer to what has become a really popular approach in terms of nutrition-sensitive social protection within the kind of cash plus variety. So that is, you provide cash transfers or food transfers with some key additional component. In this case, that additional component is nutrition behavior change communication. These are trainings of mothers on approaches to improving child diets and nutrition. The program here is the Transfer Modality Research Initiative in Bangladesh. Our team at IFPRI has been studying that for many years and designed an experiment that provided either cash or food transfers with or without nutrition behavior change communication and compared that to a control group. The key takeaway for us here is that it was only the cash plus nutrition BCC treatment arm that had a significant impact on nutritional status. It increased height for age Z-scores of children by 0.25 standard deviations for children under 2 years of age at base that were under 2 years of age at baseline. That effect size is comparable to some of our most successful direct nutrition programs. So it was this combination of resources, relaxing the budget constraint, and the nutrition information that really made a big difference. The mechanism that they found was that this worked through improved diets, increasing intake of animal source foods in particular, along with reductions in illness. What we took away is about cash plus BCC modalities. This has also been replicated in a small pilot study in Ethiopia and elsewhere. There's other support for this combination, but these results are sensitive to the quality of the BCC delivery. Okay, next I'm going to shift the program modality, the social protection program modality, to talk about school meal programs. And what's important to know here is that school meals can be a really important platform to deliver high quality and nutritious food, including in the form of fortified food to vulnerable populations. The results here are from a study that I led in Uganda, working in northern Uganda IDP camps many years ago. And we looked at the effect of, we designed an experiment that compared either on-site school meals that included nutritious fortified food or an equivalent food ration that was done as a take-home ration monthly where mothers could prepare that food at home. The key takeaway from this part of the study is that multiple micronutrient fortified school meals delivered in the IDP camps reduced moderate to severe anemia prevalence in adolescent girls aged 10 to 13 years by nearly 18 percentage points. That's a very large effect size. And it was because during that time, anemia prevalence got worse for girls of this age in the control group and got better in any of the treatment arms. Also, there was a helpful spillover effect. The take-home ration of equivalent composition actually reduced moderate to severe anemia in adult women in the same households by 13 percentage points, with no reduction in the effect size for children that were in the school meal program, showing that the take-home rations can actually be effective at helping others in the household. Okay, my last example is actually building on the PSNP in Ethiopia. So we have been working through funding from USAID with on a program called SPEAR. This is a graduation model program in Ethiopia that is run by World Vision in partnership with Karen Orda, working very closely with the Ethiopian government to support delivery of the PSNP and then adding these other graduation model components. So graduation model programs provide a big push approach to try to improve well-being. They include large asset grants, life skills coaching, temporary consumption support like the PSNP, access to savings accounts, and health information or services. There is evidence that this is a highly effective modality from this 6-country study that was published in Science in 2015. And our SPEAR program was building on the PSNP, again, working closely with the Ethiopian government. We just took a look in some of our results at the effect of the program in protecting households from drought shocks, and so from dry and low rainfall periods. The period of study is that on the right, which is so for here, a very dry period would be down at the bottom of this graph on the right. The period that we were looking at was relatively moderate drought shocks. But we looked at how the program helped protect households from those shocks. What we found is that for a kind of median-sized drought shock increase in dryness of about 2.5 standard deviations, that actually looking at women's dietary diversity and women's body mass index, that those drought shocks actually reduced dietary diversity and reduced the body mass index for adult women. Numerically, differences weren't statistically significant, but we see an increase for women that were exposed to those shocks that were getting the SPEAR program. The net effect is actually a 16 percentage point increase in dietary diversity from getting the program during a drought shock and a 0.26 increase in BMI, which is helpful in this poor population. And I'll just finish up then, just to note that what we see is that cash transfer programs are widely used, but the cash alone is not going to get us there in terms of achieving what we need for nutrition. That cash plus approaches and things like graduation models are really essential. And I just put in an additional comment that many of the designs of social protection programs are actually gender blind or gender neutral. They don't focus so much on the status of women. The PSNP in Ethiopia helpfully has gone much further than that. And we found that this is these types of approaches of making programs gender sensitive is also key. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dan, for those additional insights. I think that added a lot of value to the conversation and particularly highlighted some of those considerations that really constitute a successful design of a nutrition-sensitive social protection program. So thank you so much. Now we'll pass it over to Angela Hansen from Food Systems Foresight to deliver a presentation on the basics of human-centered design to get us into that mindset as well. Over to you, Angela. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. Sorry, I was talking to the mute. I was going to just confirm that you can see my slides, and I think that you can. So my name is Angela Hansen, and I want to thank Dan and Cynthia Yehu for really offering such rich perspective from the country level, from the perspective of an evaluator. What are we thinking about when we're thinking about social protection? What are the broad needs? And the topic of this webinar is about how human-centered design can advance nutrition-sensitive social protection. So we heard about the state of that issue at the national level. We heard about our ways of thinking and ways of working with those programs and understanding when they're successful. And I'm going to talk about using human-centered design to enhance the specificity of that programming and its design and ways of working that could help that. So I'm going to just introduce human-centered design, and then we will get into the meat of the conversation. And by human-centered design, I mean, I will unpack a lot more here, but I want to start with a very basic and I think foundational and central, at least for me and my attraction to this practice, is that human-centered design is fundamentally an affirmation of human dignity. And many of these social protection programs that we're talking about today were designed with exactly that spirit in mind. How might I increase the dignity of this person who is suffering from a lack of food security? And that intention remains. We want to honor that intention and amplify that intention when we use human-centered design in social protection. But ultimately, we come to this table to affirm human dignity. And how do we do that? We use the design process, and this image of the design process I've taken from IDEO.org, fantastic organization with lots of great resources, but they synthesize the overall approach of human-centered design well in this picture, where they talk about the three phases of inspiration, ideation, and implementation. So we start by becoming inspired, then we do a lot of creation of ideas, we ideation, and then we take those ideas, we test them, we refine them, and we implement them. And during that process, we're going through sort of another sub-process, this wavy line here. We are diverging as a design group. We're looking at lots of different ideas, and then we're converging. And then we diverge again, and then we converge. That oscillation of divergence and convergence is an opportunity to refine our thinking and get closer and closer to the more right answers. So what changes when we introduce human-centered design into an ongoing design process or an ongoing social protection program? What changes needs to be our conventional mindset. So conventional mindsets are often characterized by expert-centered thinking. Oftentimes that thinking and thinking that surrounds it can be quite linear. We'll go from A to B, we will achieve growth and everything will be great. We're biased when we think this way towards research, and we're curious about finding just the right knowledge for the answer. We depend on more formal structures when our mindset is heavily conventional with design approaches. And I'm going to contrast that now to a human-centered mindset. Here, we're really focused on who's using this thing that I'm designing. What are their needs? What are their pains? And we are thinking in a way that is experiential and in a way that is lateral, right? It's not A to B equals growth and it's good. It's how do we create a dynamic resilience in this situation? We have a bias towards action when we have a human-centered mindset, and that means we try things. We look to fail fast. And we are curious not about the right knowledge, but about the right problem. Am I solving the right problem? Am I solving a root cause issue? Or am I putting a Band-Aid on a scrape when really I have something much more foundational to deal with? And also, and this is essential and really one of the driving forces behind food systems foresight, is human-centered design is radically collaborative. We are calling in and crowding in lots of voices and lots of perspectives when we're doing human-centered design. We're hearing from government, we're hearing from business, we're hearing from civil society, we're hearing from geographers, we're hearing from business majors, we're hearing from nutritionists and scientists of all kinds. But really that collaboration is what makes human-centered design work. So what can we use it for? Well, really, we can use, and I should have cited this, excuse my theft of this drawing, but this is from the Sprint book by Jake Knapp. And here we talk about products, spaces, services, and systems, which are all the different kinds of things we can design using human-centered design. So we all know what products are. Spaces and systems are sort of the space that we're getting into, and also services when we talk about nutrition-sensitive social protection. Where are folks receiving these services? Dan talked about the transfer modality and that was a central kernel of his research and understanding the outcomes that are resultant from these programs. Transfer modality is the physical space, the digital space where these services are delivered. Is it the right space? Is the space appropriate? And how does the appropriateness of the space affect the outcome? And then zooming out more broadly, what are the systems we're designing, and do those systems deliver on outcomes that we want? We talked about caloric intake, but maybe we're looking for dietary diversity. We heard that a lot. There are different outcomes. And when we design for a system that delivers dietary diversity, we get to a different place than if we design for a system that delivers simply a caloric outcome. And that's, I think, part of the exploration of many actors in social protection and how we got to this space of aspiring to be nutrition sensitive. So this is just to say, we can use human-centered design anywhere on anything. And I want to just recap on what I talked about with regard to human-centered design, that human-centered minds empathize with optimism, right? So we are empathizing with the user here. We're understanding their pain, and we're bringing our own optimism to the power and potential of this person helping us to solve their own problem. There's a lot of agency in this action. HCD also involves using observations to expose the incentives that are behind people's actions. What motivates them? What triggers their action? Human-centered design also grounds in making it. We're going to do it. We're going to pilot it. We're going to test it. We're going to build a prototype. We're going to bring our creative confidence to this process. And we're also going to surface our own assumptions so we can test them quickly. We want to give ourselves an opportunity to iterate, iterate, iterate. So how does this match up with the world of social protection? Really, it's that social protection is itself inherently human-centered. Yet, HCD is not really the commonplace approach to social protection design. Robust inclusion of social protection recipients' voice is not currently mainstream in the design of these programs. But we know that design norms can shift. And when we work alongside decision makers, designers and facilitators can adapt human-centered design tools and methods for social protection in their right context. So I thank you so much for your attention. I'm Angela Hansen, and I'm happy to take any questions when we open up to it. But back to you, Anthony, for our next session.
Thank you, Angela, for that excellent primer on human-centered design and its relevance for nutrition-sensitive social protection. I think throughout these three distinct but very complementary viewpoint presentations, we've really discovered a lot of the dimensionality and the complexity of social protection programs. And through Angela's presentation, we've sort of learned how human-centered design might be a way for us to digest and action on some of that complexity to make these programs better for the nutrition outcomes of vulnerable beneficiaries. Before we engage with our panelists in a moderated discussion, I want to first take you all on a journey into a real context of applying human-centered design in a nutrition-sensitive social protection program, specifically the homegrown school feeding program in Nigeria, which has been doing great work in Nigeria and has been one of the pioneering use cases of GAIN's own approach to human-centered design in our social protection program. So to get us in the mindset of exploring these processes at the community level in a real context, we're just going to spend the next 5 minutes enjoying a really rich video documentary that documents some moments from our recent experiences with the homegrown school feeding program in Nigeria. So please enjoy.
At GAIN, our goal is healthier diets for all, especially the most vulnerable. And one of the vehicles that we utilize to get to the bottom of the pyramid households or most vulnerable households is through our social investment program or social protection program. Our social protection program is aimed at enabling access to more resilient diets for the most vulnerable population, as women and children who experience extreme poverty. And GAIN uses structural lens to inform our social protection work. And this includes things like gender sensitivity, sustainability, climate awareness, and human-centeredness. For the human-centeredness aspect of our structural lens, GAIN very recently developed a human-centered design toolkit to support social protection practitioners, administrators, and all other system actors in effectively applying human-centered design principles in nutrition-sensitive social protection design processes.
We are here in Kaduna State as one of the first states where we are rolling out this HCD toolkit with participants drawn from the government National Homegrown School Feeding Program in Kaduna State, that's KATSIPA. Also, we've drawn participants from the schools where the Homegrown School Feeding Program is going on.
Poor food quality will lead to malnutrition. When you give a child poor quality food, they will be undernourished.
Insufficient human resources for monitoring and evaluation. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is rice and beans.
For you, you said you've eaten food in this school. So what meals have you been served?
On Monday, let's do moi.
Monday, moi.
Tuesday, rice and stew.
Tuesday, rice and stew.
Wednesday, rice and beans.
Wednesday, rice and beans.
For the SBMC, the same thing, insufficiency of food, the SBMC noticed this. The same, it has to come with eggs. The eggs are not enough food.
They also complained of lack of water, that they didn't have the borehole flowing as at the time that feeding was taking place. So my name is Sophie Bako. I'm a participant in the HCD toolkit training in Kaduna State. This training has helped me most especially in my service to the program as the M&E. It has really opened my understanding. But when I speak to the beneficiaries, the people that are affected by the program directly, I'll be able to get from their responses, I'll be able to get the real issues that the program is facing, and then we'll be able to proffer solution that will be a lasting solution and to be an impactful solution.
I hope that you all enjoyed that video as much as I do. It really just excellently showcases the value and the promise of human-centered design when applied in a social protection system context. And I think that really sets the stage nicely as a way to introduce our fourth and final panelist and discussant, who comes to us from Nigeria and is a cook in the homegrown school feeding program. Let's please welcome Ms. Rachel Chioma to share with us some words on her experience working and serving in the homegrown school feeding program, and highlighting some of the key challenges and potential solutions that you envision for tackling this system through design. Rachel, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, as earlier was mentioned, my name is Rachel from the homegrown feeding program in Nigeria. This program was inaugurated by the then president of Nigeria, President Muhammad Buhari, in 2016. And his mission was to make sure that children between the age of 6 to 12 will have one food a day. And this program has been a good one in Nigeria today. And we'll have a lot of feedbacks on what have been enjoyed by this home feeding program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel, for those remarks and for being here with us today. I think your perspective will add so much community level perspective in our upcoming moderated discussion. So without further ado, I'll ask that all panelists who are able would turn on their videos, and we will start to engage with one another in a series of questions for discussion that I think will shed further light on how we can address some of these key challenges in social protection design, and how we can identify those opportunities to strategically use and take advantage of human-centered design approaches in those processes. So just to start out, I'd very much like to raise a first question about decision-making power, because I think understanding who's in the room when social protection design decisions are made is really fundamental to understanding how and when to best utilize new design approaches, including human-centered design. So I'd like to raise the question of who has decision-making power currently in social protection design decisions, and are there feasible pathways within those processes to enable more voices to be heard and more effectively heard in those processes? This is open to all panelists. You're welcome to respond. Particularly, I think, Sintiyehu, with your position in government social protection administration, I'd particularly enjoy hearing from you if you have thoughts on that question. But welcome, any panelists to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. On this regard, I know, food security is not a one sector issue. It has a multidisciplinary approach. For us, poverty, we believe that poverty is not, alleviated by one sector contribution. So when in terms of design aspects, for instance, when we want to design a new phase, we will establish a technical team comprising of different sectors. So those sector participants will engage to have at least a technical concept note that will be reviewed and approved by the high level, so that we'll have a draft design document. On that state, we also, share the same draft document to our donor partners to align with their country strategy or country intervention, so that we will have the endorsement from the different government sectors as well as the donor partners to have a one design document that will support the poor and vulnerable people of Ethiopia. That's what we are doing traditionally. We always have an updated mapping to the sectors. If you have any additional kind of intervention that need to be incorporated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sintiyehu, for that excellent response. Just one quick follow-up. I'm wondering if you can speak to whether and to what extent you're engaging beneficiaries' input already in either this technical group or any of these input generating processes that you use when you design new interventions or new phases. Are there any mechanisms through which you get input from beneficiaries or people at the community level?
Yeah, we can have a direct discussion with the community level issues. We also have representative from regional Wereda level to have a new design. If you couldn't make a participatory approach, that will not address, the design will not address the issue at the ground level. So as per their context, we can have many interviews. We use also many research documents. Actually, in Ethiopia, PSNP, we are very lucky because it's a very researched program. So we use those data evidences to understand what's the priority things to be considered as far as we have the appropriate finance envelope, so that we'll reach by prioritizing to some consensus to incorporate the main features of, the design. So this is what we are doing, but in terms of reaching at design level, we have a consultation, an interview, and other evidences to be considered after designing. Some of the sub-projects also need a community-based participation. We have also a community-based public work guideline to prioritize in every annual planning time, so that we will address those issues, the prioritized issues from the community by involving them, contributing from their labor, and also, adding to that the investment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that additional elaboration. I think that's very, very useful. Would any other panelists like to comment on this topic of decision-making power and how we can get more voices included in that aspect?
I should continue. Okay, I think I want to add a little on the decision making.
Yes, please.
In as much as the governments have the power to make decision making, it is also advisable too for the teachers, the children too, to come together. Let them be at the know, so that only decision making that is being made, they'll be carried along. It's a teamwork. If they bring their opinion, they can be able to put them together in order to help them out. But the sole people that will make the decision making is the government. But everybody should be carried along, so that when decision or designs are being made, this will also go a long way and to make the program succeed. So everybody's contribution is very important in these projects. Thanks.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you, and thank you for that perspective, Rachel. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. We need to involve more of the people on the front lines and those beneficiaries in decision-making processes. And I think that adds a lot of value to good social protection design. Angela, I see you've come off mute. Would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I certainly want to begin by amplifying what Rachel said there, which is, we need to really focus on proximity to the problem. And so when we think about who is right there at the face of the issue in a school feeding program, it is people like Rachel who are feeding the children. And she has some really interesting perspectives on where efficiencies and effectiveness can be improved, right? So getting that proximity to the problem, critically important. And then also I will say, we talked about getting donor buy-in, and I think that it would be impossible to talk about social protection and the design of social protection schemes without the role of donors like the World Food Program, who traditionally have done a lot of design of these types of interventions. I think that's one actor we should at least name and have on, or one type of actor, not specifically one agency, but donors do a lot of design work in this space. I'd love to hear too, Dan, from your perspective on analysis and evaluation.
Sure, I'm happy to take that up. Thanks, Angela, and thanks. I really do appreciate it. It's great to hear from everyone on this. I think there's a lot of room for improving local participation, the people that are actually in the programs that are benefiting directly in the design of many programs. And that's something, in fact, that we're also is a kind of a focus of some of our research. We're actually in Mozambique. We have a study that's looking at kind of the handover of the implementation of a school meals program from an international NGO to government, and looking the main point of the study actually is to look at the role of community engagement and the different ways that communities can kind of bring their voice into that process. So I think this is really essential. I I think that getting that at the design phase and then having opportunities for feedback as well. I know in the PSNP that there are local community task forces that include participants, or that they include local leadership, but also participants, and there is a feedback mechanism there if something is not working. So that also helps, but that doesn't replace kind of engagement of the community at the design phase at the beginning. So I think there's a lot of room for kind of improvement in design through those approaches. I don't think that that's kind of contrary to kind of providing good evidence as well. I think it's often very helpful to kind of be able to show, through careful measurement, what the impacts of programs are, so that we can learn about different strategies to kind of strengthen designs. It'd be great to get that advice on what people think is working, or where they think the gaps are, what they think is missing. And then what we like to do is work with them to test those approaches. When working at scale, there's a challenge there. The PSNP, for example, is a very large program. And so working sometimes with big implementing partners like Orda, who's on the ground in Amhara region in Ethiopia, is really key for us to be able to bring that evidence together. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and all of the speakers for your input on this question. I think that's really covered a lot of ground. And I think, Dan, your last point is a really nice segue into the next topic that I'd like to get your input on, which is on the quality of evidence. So obviously, social protection design is a relatively high stakes endeavor. And so many, if not all, programs are designed using various sources of high quality evidence. And that's what policymakers and donors and practitioners are used to engaging with as they make important design decisions. Human-centered design processes do produce evidence, and human-centered insight is a source of evidence, but it might take different forms and different shapes than what decision makers are accustomed to using as they make design decisions. So I'm wondering what might be done to ensure that human-centered design evidence, including perspectives from those community members, are strong sources of evidence, and that those insights are convincing enough to really be taken seriously and to hold weight in design processes. Do we see any reason for concern about alternative sources of evidence or evidence that take these types of forms, or do we think that those sources of evidence might be equally welcomed and readily integrated into social protection design processes? Would anyone like to comment on that? Perhaps, Dan, if you'd like to take that as a follow-up to your last point, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Sure. Thanks, Anthony. So yeah, this is a big issue, and it's an important one, both kind of the types of evidence, the quality of evidence, and then how that evidence is communicated and to whom. I mean, these are essential features of kind of the feedback that goes into program design and then improving the delivery of program over time. So at IFPRI, we're constantly working on trying to find ways to sort of improve kind of all aspects of that. So one of the things that we do, so as you saw, we do a lot of kind of careful quantitative measurement of the impacts of programs. That really helps to reinforce support for the programs when we find which modalities are helpful. We see that that funding for programs tends to follow that type of evidence. But also we can test modalities. But when programs are implemented, there's so many decisions that are made, detailed decisions about how the program is implemented and what's going to happen on the ground and what that's going to look like. And you need local input for that. And so that's the type of thing where there should be a lot of work going on the ground to engage local partners, to engage beneficiaries, to kind of work on the small details that will make a program contextually relevant in those communities and successful. What we tend to do on the research side is when we're getting a body from that type of approach, when you're hearing consistently something new that needs to be tried, then that's where we like to sort of bring that into sort of one of our evaluations and learn. The other things that we are increasingly doing is bringing in a qualitative component to this kind of more quantitative measurement, where we're hearing, again, directly from beneficiaries, from program technical teams, and we often bring that in to fill in the gaps in evidence, or to help us connect the dots more clearly. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan, for those perspectives as well. I'd like to ask Sintayehu, you specifically mentioned in your presentation that PSNP is a well-researched program, and indeed there's a lot of sources of evidence around PSNP and about PSNP. I'd love to hear your perspective on how you navigate various sources of evidence and different types of evidence to inform your decision-making processes. Is there a particular way that human-centered insights or insights from communities should reach your desk, for example, when you're thinking about how to improve a program?
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. Actually, for us, we have different platforms that give some attention to this kind of studies. And also, we have a frequent study in the program that's established for a long time. For instance, from 2006 to 2021, IFPRI was the one to study in a 2-year basis the program effects, impacts the program gaps that needs to be corrected in different phases. So these are the main study that we rely on, but we have also in the program to study some of information that we need to understand. It's a complementary kind of study because we understand the IFPRI study is a base for this program to change some of the contexts that we are seeing in a gap, and also to improve, to strengthen those that we are doing in a better manner, but that needs to be scaled up. So, for instance, if you want to understand while we are in different situations, for instance, in conflict situation, we will use, approach with other studies. If we want to also understand when there is a shock, when the shock happen, like drought, we will have, some study to show us what was, the impact that we are, facing. So, in terms of, buying from the policy level, the political level, we use always the IFPRI study because the study uses the data of the country. So maybe because of its huge data that we need for this kind of study, that's why we rely on Ethiopian Statistical Agency. But for the analysis, IFPRI will use the same data. So the government really appreciates those kind of, mutual joint kind of, intervention for data. The government will collect for the analysis. IFPRI will do their best to show, the country different evidences that will inform the future policy decision. So these are the experience that we have, but we have also multiple kind of studies that we are doing using the program resource, and also our donor partners always will ask us if there is a need to support with to support in a financial and also to have an evidence for some of the program challenges that we are in. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santiago. I think that's a very valuable perspective from an administrator's point of view on how you engage with various types of evidence and how you value those sources of evidence. For the sake of time, I want to move on to our next and what will be the final question in our discussion session. And then I would love to maybe address one or two questions from the audience. So if you haven't already placed a question in the Q&A section, please take the opportunity to do so now, and we'll try and make a few minutes at the end of this session to specifically address one or two questions if we can. But the third question that I'd like to speak with the panelists about today is on the topic of barriers to inclusion. So meaningfully engaging beneficiaries' voice and community members' voice in the design process requires that administrators and governments and system actors have the capacity to identify the right beneficiaries and to make them feel comfortable and supported and valued in their contributions to those processes. And sometimes those barriers to inclusion are very tough to navigate. And so ultimately, end users or beneficiaries aren't able to meaningfully engage, or at least not as meaningfully as possible. So I'd like to raise our final question to the panelists about based on your experiences engaging with social protection systems in different ways, from your perspective, what are the most significant barriers that prevent the inclusion of vulnerable beneficiaries and community members in the design process and in conversations that lead to design improvements? Are there things that can be done to address these barriers and ultimately make design processes more responsive or better able to capture that feedback from the community level? I'd particularly love to hear from Rachel on this one, as someone representing that community viewpoint. Yes. What does it look like for you, Rachel, to be meaningfully included and to have your voice heard in a design decision?
Yes, like in Nigeria, we have barriers, which is really affecting it. Like one of the barriers we have is poor funding. Poor funding, well, that's a problem, a challenge. We also have corruption too, is also contributing to that. Then we have poor logistics, poor M&E, and also lack of political will too is also affecting the program. And I'm sure if we can find solution to this problem is by trying to look at these areas where we have the barrier and look at options we can use in order to solve the problems. Like when we talk about low funding, if the government can be able to increase the fund, you find out that the program will continue. And also monitoring, we need good monitoring of the program too. When we do this, also it can also enhance the program the program too. And then when we talk about low budgeting, we try to put it too, like the budget should be increased so that we'll have enough products in order to give out to the society. So when we put this in together, we can see that the program will be of benefit to everybody, both the students, the people, the teacher, the cook, the vendor, the aggregator, everybody will work hand in hand in order to better the program.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Rachel. I think that says a lot, and you've pointed to some of the really key challenges that prevent these systems from adequately listening to and serving those who are at the community level. I'd like to ask Angela to weigh in on this point, having been involved in numerous design processes that seek to meaningfully engage those right at the, with the closest proximity to the problem, as you mentioned. Can you highlight from your experience any key barriers that maybe you've faced that have needed to be overcome in order to reach those at the community level?
Absolutely. And Anthony, I'd like to talk about barriers sort of at two levels. I'll meet Rachel where she's at the community level in the kitchen, feeding folks. And there's logistical challenges to getting a design team out there and in that space for a long enough time to really observe and listen with empathy. So there's absolutely design team challenges in getting to the space. During COVID, when we were doing human-centered design, there were tools and ways of working that allowed us to get in community, not in a perfect, embedded way for great observation, but still a way that allowed us channels for listening. So logistics are a big challenge. Another thing that people forget about is the opportunity cost to participants. We think we'll build it and they will come. We'll open our doors or our convention center or our meeting room to all of the farmers and they will arrive and they will tell us during planting season what their problems are. No, they will not, right? They're planting right now. And so the opportunity cost of participation is real with participants using human-centered design. So thinking through how you can respectfully invite folks and remunerate them for their time, that's important. But I want to zoom way out and just say what I think is the biggest barrier. And that's what I already introduced, which is our conventional mindsets. Our mindsets in design and in funding and in finance, all the way to the global levels in social protection are shifting. We're moving from a food security mindset to a food systems mindset. And that transformation, that food systems transformation that we need in order to address things like climate change are really going to require that we adopt some epistemic humility and make the changes like the one Dan mentioned in terms of including qualitative evidence in our assessments and building programs that have feedback built in. So while it's excellent to evaluate a program every couple of years and make corrections, what are the continuous improvement opportunities that the implementation team has? That's where I get really excited.
Thank you so much, Angela. Really wonderful points. And I appreciated how you broke up the idea of barriers into these very distinct levels. Very interesting. We have just a few minutes left in this event. I want to give Dan and Sintiyehu a chance to respond to this final question if you have any additional remarks to add.
Sintiyehu, let me, I'd like you to go first if you can, please.
Yeah, mine is very short. I really share what's, been explained earlier. One of the challenge in Ethiopia, maybe because the program is very huge and complex, it needs a huge investment. So that large investment is not easily, mobilized. Due to that, we always, in a challenge to accommodate all beneficiaries that really need to be in the program. So we have always a waiting list to be, covered with this program. That's what I want to make a point. Thank you.
That's a very excellent consideration, Cynthia. Thank you. And Dan, over to you for the final remarks.
Yeah, and on barriers to inclusion, it was wonderful to hear from others. I think these are, the perspectives that are critical. I think in a program operating at scale, you need those opportunities for community input, especially at the design phase. And we've had a good discussion about how to do that. But also as the program is ongoing, as Angela said, to kind of for continuous improvement, tweaks to implementation, well-designed programs have those built in and continue to sort of fine-tune them. Cynthia just brought in another dimension of inclusion, which is, we tend to focus on those in the program, but we also know that there are people that are, it's common, not just in Ethiopia, everywhere, that people that are eligible and well-deserving are actually outside the program and don't have access. So there's a constant need to kind of refine, make programs more efficient, to be able to help them to kind of get better reach and hopefully increase the scale of impact. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you so much to all of our panelists who joined us today and shared their valuable perspectives. And thanks to the audience who's joined us for this conversation. I hope that this webinar added some perspective and highlighted some important opportunities that might be worth grasping to incorporate more thoughtful, human-centered design approaches in the various ways we approach social protection design in context. So I note that there aren't any questions in the Q&A box outstanding, so we must have done a wonderful job of addressing all of your questions. But if you want to reach out to the panelists, I'm sure they would welcome your questions later on. And I hope that this has inspired you all to think about ways that you can incorporate human-centered design, or at least start thinking about that in the context of your work. And with that, we'll adjourn this session, and thank you so much, everyone, for attending.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Paula,
you.
and the socialprotection.org team.